All right, so today we're going to look at the eye. All right, so I'm just going to draw a sort of classical eye, right? Think about where I do everything very light because these lines that I'm drawing now are not going to be there in the end. These are just construction lines. And this would be someone's right eye. And when you see the way the lower and the upper lid go, there's a diagonal like this. There's a where the swelling is here. Look at my eraser. Often people put this point here lower than this, and it makes people look sad. You got to be very careful that this is actually higher than the corner of the eye. This part up here doesn't necessarily fall in that angle. And you got a lower lid. Up here you're going to have the eyebrow. So here you're going to have the eyebrow. The nose comes in here. So let's just see the pupil. You notice how the pupil, this part of the top of the iris is hidden. So I know that the pupil is going to be the darkest dark, unless there's a highlight. Well, there probably will be a highlight on it. So normally what you do is you look at the light as it comes in. Maybe it's coming in from over here, and look for all the shadows on this side of all the forms. So they would be over here. Over here, they would cast a shadow over here. The eyelashes might cast a shadow down here. But I'm just doing a classical kind of shading of an eye, which means that everything that comes forward is light. Oops. So here you have a ball. The light comes from this side. You're going to have shadow on that side. It's going to cast a shadow here, the shape of the object. Where it starts, it's going to be sharp, and it's going to get vague as it goes out. It's going to look like, if I make a dark here, it's going to look right because the light from here bounces back up in to the shadow. So you can have a lighter, reflect kind of a transparent dark in there. When you paint it with a transparent color. There's going to be a highlight up here. And this halftone here has to be, disappear. The softer it is, the rounder the object will seem. And then you're going to have your darkest dark in here. This edge is going to seem very visible because of the light behind the dark. Same with here. So the cast shadow is darker. The reason I'm showing you this is because these principles are in the eye, and this is what we're looking for. You notice how this gets bigger as it comes here? That's using the principle of receding. So when things get smaller, they disappear. These are fatter and longer. You look for that principle too. We can go into that more in another video. This highlight will be the shape of the light. So if it's a window, it'll be a square following the form. So anyway, so then we go back into our eye, and we're thinking, this is when you look for the light. When you do it classically, I should show you that. Here's a space. Classical rendering, you're kind of going like this. Shade around everything brings this middle part forward. So we're going to use this kind of thinking. If I was looking at an eye, I would use this. This is a good way to think if you're doing sculpture. You really want to understand the muscles and the the depths. You notice it's much easier for me, I'm right-handed, to go this way than to make a line this way. It's an awkward kind of movement. So I tend to make all my lines this way. I don't like cross-hatching where you go like that. It's an ugly line. If you're going to cross-hatch, I think it's much better if you just change the angle a little bit. Get a richer dark. But anyway, we're not doing that now. So I'm thinking this is underneath. It's the, if you have stairs, this right here is underneath in here where there's going to be shadow. This is facing the top is facing the light. So this is going to be darker. So anything that's underneath is going to get darker. There's a lid overhanging. This is going to get darker. Now the iris is a colored part of the eye. It's not a form thing. So we're going to use sort of tricks to make that happen. Right now we're thinking about the form as if this were a piece of sculpture in 3D. How can we get the feeling of roundness? So there's a big ball in here. And I'm using the darks around the edge of this ball. There's a little, the top of the step where the, on top of the lower eyelid. Here. This is always better if you can, look in real life. I'm just going over sort of the classic idea of an eye, and it's good to learn what the classic idea is because then you can look at an eye and you can say this is where it deviates from the classical. Usually there's a crease in here, and you want to think about how it's wrapping itself around the ball, which means, again, dark on the outside, light, and then gets darker in here. Now I have a good kneaded eraser, so you clean it by kneading. I'll put a link to this below. And these erasers are good because you can push it and just kind of lighten everything. Because right now I'm not actually drawing the thing. I'm just trying to find out where it is in space, where all the parts are. So you have an eye. Say you have the color of the eye here. Let's leave something for the highlight before I get the paper too messed up. Say you have a square window and you have a highlight. This is the frontmost part of the eye, which means the light's coming from over here. It's hitting the corner of the eye and it's bouncing up towards us. So let's say that's where the highlight's going to be. If that's where the highlight's going to be, usually this is the dark. It's almost always the darkest dark you can create in painting or drawing. So it's good to establish that. So right away you can see all my other lights my other darks are too light. There's usually a darker tone here. What happens is if the light comes in here, it goes through the eye like it would a glass of liquid. Say you have a glass of wine or something. It goes through that, and it's going to light up this in here. So this part of the colored part of the eye is actually going to be darker. It seems a little counterintuitive because you're thinking, why it lit up over here, why is this not lighter? But it travels through the eye and lights up over here. This part, the top of the whole eyeball is going to be darker because you have the lid casting a shadow and the eyelashes, which are up here. Let's see. So say you have, let's see what you have here. This is a little bit funny in here. And see how this, I just made a soft area of that? If you have something soft, it makes it rounder. When I have a harder shadow, it makes an edge, a corner. So if you want this to look rounder, you can go softer in there. Make it very light touch with your hand, and it will curve around better. Now, using this principle that the highlight is at the top, you can take your eraser and you can lighten every part of the ball that sticks forward right there. And it kind of flares out. It gives you the effect of being blown out with light. There's usually kind of a crease here. I'm going to try and somewhat follow the form of the eye. Like this is, if I make lines like this, it really describes the shape of this, the lids. Now remember this top eyelid is like a top part of the step. So it's going to be lighter. The light's directly on it. With women, they generally have more extra fat up here, and that's kind of a beautiful thing when it fills up here. I mean, everybody's different, but it can, if you make it less of this, it's sort of less feminine. So I want to make this a dark hollow. So I'm going to fill this in with a nice even tone. I kind of don't want to see these lines. I want your eye to blend them into just shadow. This kind of cuts in here. And you gotta, anything you do in drawing, if you have a good paper, this is actually just cheap copy paper, not even good copy paper. I like the idea if you're a skilled artist, all you need is a pencil. I mean, this is a drawing pencil, but you should be able to use any, like #2 pencil and do a good job with that. I'm going to move the lid down to the lower lid down to here a little bit, because remember, I want to keep this higher. By making this darker, I make it go backwards in space. This has kind of I think I always use as a gauge for whenever I do portraits is, does the person look sad? Are they tired, whatever? And there's a little bit of like a tiredness, sadness to this, which means that if that's not what I'm after, I might need to adjust somewhere. It's usually kind of a dark outline. It can be beautiful when you paint it, and like no matter what color your eye is, you might have a beautiful blue here. If you make the area right near the lights very dark, it makes the light appear lighter. Everything's relative. So you might say to yourself, this is too light, but maybe it's not. Maybe this is not dark enough. I'm using an HB pencil. I like to use a #2, just a regular cheap old pencil, because a good artist should be able to do something with what they have, I mean, there is a certain point when you're doing paintings and all that where if you don't have good materials, good brushes, a good surface to paint on, it limits you. But I think we should develop our skills so that we can work with anything. And then from there, you go on and get better materials. Now there's sort of a line here. I don't want that. I want to get rid of that. And I have an eyebrow up here, and the eyebrow is going to have more texture to it. Let's see. It's going to go something like that. The way the hairs move, direction of the hairs. Usually you have eyelashes here, so you have little eyelashes underneath here too. I'm kind of, it's a little bit impressionistic. Like you have to, I'm not drawing the eyelashes, but you have to, when you back up from this, it'll start to make sense. Because your eye, so the eyelashes go, your eye fills in the blanks. Usually when you have eyelashes, they can, the shadow can cast all the way down to here. So I'm going to do the light from this side. And you can change the lighting as you go along. You can change it. You can decide I want a different effect. So I'm going to make the light coming from this side like I have my highlight. This is lit up. Sometimes you see the lines and the iris more there. Maybe this is a dark eye, like a dark brown. And then there's a little bit of color when you get to here. This pencil only goes so dark, so I'm kind of mushing the paper as I do this, which means I won't be able to erase there much anymore if I want to change it. So let's say the shadow comes down here. This becomes like the cast shadow over here. You got the down wall, and maybe there's long lashes. This is just basic place to start with. You can spend, many hours doing this and get a much more fine, real, detailed, more, better illusion. But I'm not looking at anything right now. You should be able to do this out of your head. I mean, as a student, you want to copy a lot and learn as much as you can about what you see. But eventually, you want to be able to put things down and draw from your imagination. So I see that this looks a little like it needs to be sharper. I think we all have a good, we've all looked at things a lot in our lives, so we all have a good instinct. So if something looks funny to you, it could be. And actually, with a lot of my made-up paintings and things, I often just keep going until it doesn't look funny, and then I put it aside for a few months or a year, and then when I go back, right away you see what looks funny again, and then you become more objective when you leave it aside for a while, and then when you come back, you know what to do. There's usually a highlight too in here. Let me pull back a little bit on this. So you can see when you get back a little bit, the illusion works better. And I want to I think I have too much shadow coming over here. I can put a little more light in here. Maybe I want to flare some of this out, lighten some of this because it's the top of that whole, that ball there. Maybe some of this light is reflected light, like in here. Maybe I want to get more of that, make it look more transparent. And I do that by leaving space in the line there. This down here looks too dark, so I'm just going to pat it. When you get older, you get these beautiful smile lines. You get character. I don't know why everybody wants to look as if they have no wrinkles at all, but the wrinkles kind of show your personality, what you've done with your life, what kind of person you are. But as a professional portrait artist, you want to you get an idea of how people want to look, how they want to present themselves, and you try and make them look like that, like they do. You make them look like they are, but on a good day, they're having a good day. And you still want to make it look like them. Otherwise, it becomes funny. Like They're trying to be someone else. Let's see. And there's all kinds of other things going to happen too. This is kind of a deep set eye, but some people have an extra fold in here. The nose would come in here. The eye's looking slightly to that side because I have this up. If I pulled, and because of the way the ball of where I put the iris. If you put the iris over here more and you raise this up and lower this down, then it'll look like it's looking more over there. So this is kind of this round part, the colored part, sticks off the ball a little bit. So if the ball, this is from the profile from the side, it sticks out like this. So when this moves over to here, it would bulge it more. This would go up, the dark would go up higher. That's kind of too dark. Actually, I want it dark, but more of an accent, less thick. And then with the eyebrow, whenever you do something like this with the eyebrow, it's got texture. You don't want to paint every hair. You want to look at where the shadows are. First, try and see it. And this is whenever you do, like in landscapes, whenever you do a bush or anything with texture. First, you want to see the dark and light shapes. So you get a nice solid form to work from. And then after that, you can go in with put a few accents here and there, depending on what kind of eye they are. The way I've done this eyebrows, so it's not very good, but that's for another time. Yeah. So let's see. You're going to have, usually you see, just proportion-wise, you look to see an eye before the side of the head, another eye between eyes, and we're out of the picture frame. So that's how you do it now. That's a good place to start from. Actually, let me make this. You don't want the ledge on top of the eyelid to be too thick, or it looks like you've got some sort of sickness or something. Take that off. That's not helping. So remember that the bulge up here, there's an angle here. This bulge and this bulge to give that beautiful classical shape. This might go deeper, wider. But I almost never draw. Drawing is what I do to get ideas for paintings. I draw things out of my head, and then I do a painting, which ends up being totally different, but it's a place to start from. This comes down. All right, that's enough. So there you have a basic eye, and that's a good place to start from. And then when you look at someone else, you say, oh, well, their iris is smaller, they're less deep set, they have a bigger lower lid, they have an extra bulge under here, they have extra fat up here. See, that got more feminine right away just by doing that. Pretty interesting. And make the eyebrow thinner. And you compare it to the standard classical eye, and then you see the changes you want to make. So it's good to be able to do something like this out of your head. Thanks for watching.